Hi everyone, I'm Ryan and this is another episode of Blockchain Markets. And today I'm here with Jack Yeu, co-founder and CCO at Switcheo. Hi Jack, welcome.
Hello, it's great. It's great to be here.
Thank you. And because we got from the blockchain markets community a lot of interest for decentralized exchanges, and being Switcheo, the first decentralized exchange on the Neo platform, then a lot of people also interested to hear more about how you guys are doing, and then what is the plans for the coming quarters and all that. But before we start, maybe we can discuss, for the ones that don't know you, if you can give us a short background of yourself.
Right. Okay. So I'm Jack. I'm Chief Commercial Officer and co-founder of Switcheo. So I came from a UI development background, and then Ivan and Henry, which are my other co-founders, they come from a more technical background. So we started Switcheo from while participating in the City of Zion debt competition just last year, with the idea of creating a new decentralized exchange. So we did that, and since doing that, we did our ICO in March, and then after that we launched our mainnet in early April, and yeah, that's pretty much how we got here.
Cool. And so for people that don't know much about Switcheo, can you tell us in a nutshell what Switcheo is?
Of course, Ryan. So Switcheo is a decentralized exchange built on the Neo blockchain. Currently we are the only and we are the first decentralized exchange built on Neo, and we're building towards being a DEX for every blockchain. So we're trying to build a DEX on Ethereum and on Qtum as well. So the idea is to have a DEX that has all the different that connects all the different blockchains and connects all the digital assets across the different blockchains together.
Well, that's really interesting, and I'll get more into that in a second. But first, before we get into the other blockchains as well, then maybe we can discuss on Neo. On why did you guys decide to start at least on top of Neo? What did you think it was interesting on the Neo platform that you said, well, let's begin here?
So we actually we got into Neo because of the City of Zion competition initially. So the idea was to create a DEX that because back then there wasn't a DEX that was on Neo, and so between the founders we participated in a lot of ICOs that were on Neo. We bought into the first Neo ICO, Red House, and amongst a few other different Neo ICOs. And we realized it took the centralized exchanges so long to list all these tokens. So we wanted to create a DEX to actually sell or buy more of these Neo tokens that we got from the ICOs. So it's a pretty funny story. We created a DEX so that we can buy and sell more tokens. Yeah.
Well, it's a good story because then with many of the projects I've talked to, it's mainly the most successful ones start by fixing your own problem, or trying to. There were some guys that had, for example, were in other projects problems with the keys. They couldn't find it, so then they decided to start a project on key management and then so on with others. So that, I think it's interesting, and but there are a lot of guys in the blockchain markets community that know about investments and tokens and all that, but I'm not sure that everybody knows really much the differences between the centralized and decentralized. Just from in a nutshell, can you tell everybody what is the main disadvantages actually of centralized? Because those are the biggest ones now, but there are also some disadvantages of having a centralized.
Right. Actually, I'll talk about 3 disadvantages of centralized exchanges and 3 advantages of decentralized exchanges, so that you have a better idea.
Sure.
So the first disadvantage of a centralized exchange is huge listing fees. Like for example, Binance is now charging upwards of like, well, rumored to be charging upwards of $5 million for listing on Binance. So I mean, if you're a token and you want to get listed on Binance, you have to pay a huge amount of money, and your community, will have to wait for you to pay that kind of money before you can get listed and to trade your tokens. Then the next is like security, like the recent Bitpump hack that happened just a few weeks ago, and Binance actually that saw a few attacks over the past few months. So centralized exchanges are actually very, very vulnerable to hacks because they prove to be a single point of failure. And the third point is that they charge really high withdrawal fees when you're withdrawing very small amounts of your cryptocurrency. Like for Binance, you need the minimum amount to withdraw is 0.1. Like if you're withdrawing Ethereum, it's 0.1 ETH. And if you're withdrawing 0.1 ETH, the withdrawal fees is 0.01 ETH, which is 10% of what you're going to withdraw. Doesn't really make sense, right? So the advantages of using a decentralized exchange is, of course, it's more secure because the tokens are always stored in your wallet. You don't have to transfer your tokens out onto an exchange wallet to trade, basically. Mm-hmm. So that's the first advantage. The next advantage is because the tokens are always stored in your wallet, you can expect instant withdrawals and deposits because now you just have to wait for one block confirmation, for Neo anyways, for one block confirmation for your funds to be deposited into the exchange smart contract, which is completely under the control of your wallet. So as compared to a centralized exchange, like that would take for if you're transferring ETH from your Ethereum wallet onto Binance, it takes about, I think, 20 confirmations. So it's a bit more time. It takes like half an hour. And the last one is free listing. Like we can list pretty much any Neo token for free. Yeah. So
cool.
I hope that answers your question, Brian.
Yeah, it does. And I think another part of when I was reading your white paper, the white paper of Switcheo, it's what I think is interesting is the focus in user experience, because there are other, of course, there are other decentralized exchanges, and there have been also in the past. But from my perspective, it's a bit scary sometimes, especially for newcomers, to deal with things like Ether Delta, for example, or other ones. So why did you guys decide to take that as the main point, as the most important thing, the UX?
So we focus a lot on user experience because we want to build like the most secure decentralized exchange, or most secure exchange, but and to have it decentralized is the best way actually. So we realized that people don't want to use decentralized exchanges because they are extremely hard to use, like Ether Delta. I mean, I think a lot of users find it extremely difficult to use. So it actually took me a while when I first started, trading crypto to actually use Ether Delta, because the UI was so terrifying to me. So we wanted to create a user experience and user interface that was easy to use for our users, so that they feel comfortable using our exchange, much like like we wanted to provide an experience just like they would a centralized exchange, basically. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's interesting also, because then for the whole crypto community, if we want this to go mainstream, then and people are going to have this experience like with Ether Delta and others. Like even for me, I've been investing for a long time in cryptos, and then when I got to the first my first experience with decentralized exchanges was with Ether Delta, and it was also like that, thinking like, oh yeah, we're having all this new technology with blockchain, and it's gonna be so great. And then you go to Ether Delta and think, oh, back to the 90s. Just
yeah. I mean, it is what it is. So the idea of actually creating a DEX was like, because the idea of cryptocurrency is to always hold your own funds, right? To not have your funds in a centralized entity like a bank or whatever. So it's the idea of like, empowering the users to have their own funds. So that's kind of actually the idea of creating a DEX in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. And before we move to the from the topic of DEX and running on top of Neo, one of the questions I got from the community is about Next. So then there's a lot of hype also about Next, and but the reality is that you guys are live for a while already. So maybe what is, for the ones that don't know, what are the differences between Switcheo and what Next is planning to do? I understand they're planning more to do like a decentralized banking in the long run, right?
So for Next, actually, what they're trying to do is like pretty much be a security exchange, like pretty much what you just talked about, like so for them, they want to do fiat pairings with crypto first and still remain a DEX, basically. So for us, we want to be a DEX on every blockchain. Mm-hmm. That's the main difference. Like we want to list every token on every blockchain. That's the angle that we're coming from. And Next is, as far as I know, they haven't actually came out with a working product yet. So we can't really compare apples to apples there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I said in the community as well. That we're just comparing a live exchange with something that is still on paper. But maybe we can discuss also the next steps, which I think it's really interesting, is also to start listing other tokens from other blockchains as well, from Quantum you mentioned, and all the ERC20 from Ethereum as well. When do you guys are planning to roll that out?
So we are planning to launch that at the end of this quarter, which is Q3. Mm-hmm. So we are trying to launch both on Ethereum and Qtum at the end of this quarter. Yeah.
Cool. Another question I got also from the community is that about liquidity. So, well, at the moment we have seen like the overall crypto market is like really much in a bear market. So then there is not much happening actually, which for exchanges also then you see the volumes are now pretty low for everything. Yeah. Does that have any impact in you guys as the next developments or on the amount of that is traded daily?
Yeah, like I think the general market for all the exchanges, like during a bear market, people just generally don't want to trade. So the volume across all exchanges has actually been going on a decline over the past few weeks. So to give you an example, like I think last week Binance's volume was at $1 billion, and then just 2 days ago it was like 800 million. So you see a decline throughout all the exchanges actually.
Yeah, it has been since January, I think, like going lower and lower and lower.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think also for you guys that you're planning to launch, especially for the ERC20, that are so many there. The minute that you start listing those, I think then by default there should be more trade in Switch.
Yes.
I think like that's I'm covering. I think I've covered like pretty much everything that we had for the interview. One last question is that is regarding like these new types of exchanges that we're seeing lately, like this zero fees and commission back, like I don't know if you have seen those exchanges coming, but I think one was the biggest one, Fcoin.
Yeah. So in terms of the new exchanges, I still believe like I think our team still believes like the best model is actually still the BNB, the coin burn model, because I think having a token that is used immediately as a discount on fees is something that is more viable, because if your token is commission back, then your token value is directly related to the value of the volume that's traded on your exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads to more speculation in a way. Right. So
yeah.
To answer your question on liquidity, we're actually launching the version 2 of our contract, which so we're launching a new version of our contract at the end of this month that will let users well, you will move the order matching off chain, so now users can have instant trade confirmations, just like the exchange, the new exchanges out there, or like Binance. So you have instant trades, and it will also open up like so you'll also be launching a mobile UI, so now users can trade on the go on Switcheo, and trading APIs. So you can now allow for bots and wallets to connect through us. So one of the things that we wanted to really build was like bots, because now that you open up our trading API, and because we charge 0 maker fees, so that would kind of help with the liquidity. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm also really looking forward to see all those ERC20s tokens to start listing it on Switcheo, because I think I've traded on Switcheo, and I honestly think that the experience is much better than other platforms.
Thank you.
And well, I think that we have covered almost everything. I don't know if there's anything, Jack, that we haven't mentioned that you would like to mention.
I don't really have anything else on my end.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, then I'd like to thank you for taking the time to talk about Switcheo and decentralized exchanges with the community, with the blockchain
Well,
market.
thank you for having me, Brian.
Thank you, and also thank you guys that are listening to the interview. And I'll see you in the next interview of our blockchain market. Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.